Good afternoon and welcome to the show. I'm Jim Flyzik. During today's show, we will discuss security in a virtual world. With me today on the show are Frank Koniecnzy, the Chief Technology Officer, U.S. Air Force, James Steven, Acting Associate Chief Information Officer, Data Center Operations, and the Director of the National Information Technology Center at USDA. Mark Belk, the National Government Chief Architect at Juniper Networks. Scott Anderson, Director of Cloud Strategy at Lockheed Martin, IS&GS, and John Robinson, the Principal Consultant at Technica Corporation. Let's get into the show and start with Frank at the U.S. Air Force. Frank, tell us what your role is with secure virtualization at the Air Force.
Good afternoon, Jim. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of the Air Force. My role is basically to look at new technologies and see what is coming, going to be available in like 5 years. We implement this in a target baseline, which has the guidelines and the protocols and are basically the requirements for the new technologies. And then we take that and we actually do an implementation baseline from that, which is normally a platform as a service, whatever that we can virtualize, and it has security associated with it. And this is what LCMC is supposed to be requiring all projects in the future to actually adhere to. Right,
great. Yeah, and we're going to obviously drill down on security quite a bit here, just try to get a sense of where you guys are all playing this stuff. James Steven, how about over USDA? What is your role with secure virtualization at over at USDA?
Well, I lead 3 of the 4 enterprise data centers at USDA. We're responsible for the secure hosting of a number of federal systems, both USDA and other federal customers, along with state and local government systems. So all these systems together, they reach millions of users and represent, billions in a portfolio, along with life and limb critical systems. So it's very important that we keep those secure.
Yeah, keep them up and running. Yeah, we're going to talk about, obviously, we're all about security. We'll drill down here in a couple of minutes. Mark Belk, how about over Juniper? What's your role there with virtualization or helping government agencies achieve virtual environments?
Yeah, so we're a supplier of network equipment and security products. My position is global, so I have to support global governments in their pursuit of consolidation of services, but at the same time to leverage existing network and security equipment.
Wow, that's interesting. Maybe an off-the-record conversation. I'd be curious how other world countries are, stack up compared to what's going on here in the United States. Scott Anderson, how about over at Lockheed Martin? What's your role with helping customers achieve a virtual world?
Well, it's so. My job is to focus on taking a look at what cloud strategies are out there, what potentials for helping the government. Specifically, virtualization is the first step towards cloud. Once you're virtual, it's easier to become a cloud entity. So how do we help customers get there? What do they need to know? What do they need to be prepared with? And what do they need to be prepared for?
Yeah, great, good. I'd like to hear more about that too. It's hard to talk about virtualization without immediately talking about cloud because it seems like they're one and the same thing, or one leads to the other, as you mentioned. John, tell us a little bit about Technica Corporation, what role you play with helping achieve secure virtualization or helping customers achieve it.
Sure, and it's a good segue because I'm actually have been knee deep in for the past couple of years in helping the Defense Information Systems Agency, DISA, roll out some new cloud computing services. Of course, with the new cloud computing services for the DoD, there's a lot of virtualization involved. So my role is to help select, evaluate, and implement the best virtual technology for a given service that's being rolled out. So not everything is going to use hypervisors. Not everything is going to be opened up to the customer. So we have to balance between risk, cost, and operational complexity.
Sure. Yeah, and I know DISA, we've had DISA on the show a number of times. They have a lot of aggressive programs going on with cloud and virtualization. So you must be in the thick of it.
Very much so.
Staying busy there. Let's talk about, since we're talking security here, let's talk about some of the key security and technology benefits we think we're going to achieve with virtualization. I think when we first started talking virtualization, people said, well, that could be a security flag there. I mean, or do we have this? But then people say, well, there's benefits there too. James, Steven over at USDA, what do you see as some key security or technology benefits with virtualization?
A couple of the main security benefits is we're shrinking the perimeter rather than having multiple sites with multiple dedicated server farms. We're able to virtualize into a shared platform, shrink that perimeter, so we're watching less points of ingress.
Right.
We're achieving higher utilization, not so much a security concern, but it certainly gets us more bang for the buck from our performance. Correct. And then we're able to get a common governance structure and bring our portfolio of applications into FISMA high-rated environments. From the technology perspective, I did mention utilization rates, but we're reducing our capital expenditures, and we reduce the time to market, the turnaround from customer need to system availability.
The time to market, and you are seeing some cost benefits too, is correct?
Yes.
Yeah, interesting. And that governance, be interested how you transition the governance structures over time. It's sometimes a challenge when you go to new technologies, but I assume you have a governance structure in place for decision making.
Yes, we do have a pretty solid governance structure. We identified that early on and knew we had to have that in place prior to moving forward. Good
move. I think if some of the models I see, if you got to get the concepts of operations and the governance up front. It's a lot harder to do it after the fact. Frank, how about over at Air Force? What's some of the key benefits, security and technology benefits you think you'll achieve through virtualization?
Well, we look at virtualization from the server viewpoint as well as from the client side. So from the server viewpoint, let's look at Hill Air Force Base, for instance. They've already virtualized 400 apps. And doing that against the standard platform as a service allow them to cut down the system administration. Basically, they've gotten down to a 50-to-1 ratio of administrators just for the Windows side and 250-to-1 for the Linux side.
Wow.
So the administration is very simple now, and it's easy to watch it. As well as since it's a platform as a service, we've decreased hardware costs by, $30 million roughly, as well as it's easier to actually patch the system now. They can patch it in hours as opposed to days. So that helped on the security side. On the client side, it was kind of interesting. We've actually, Air Force Research Lab has had a deal with Citrix and Intel to actually develop a multiple independent level of security workstation where you can actually see 4 or 5, as many windows as you like at different security levels.
Oh, is that right?
And this has allowed us to, yes, it's very interesting because it's secure from the Intel chip upwards as opposed to laying on top of an operating system that's sitting on the laptop. You can be using laptops, you can be using anything. So that has helped us actually decrease the cost of going to a multi-secure environment significantly and can save, $60 million eventually in the long run as we progress on and deliver it to the field.
Wow, terrific. Exciting stuff there. Scott Anderson, how about over at Lockheed Martin? What are some of the key security or technology benefits you see in moving to these technologies with government agencies?
Well, first of all, and the rest of the panel has already talked about it, is the concept of being able to know what's out there, right? Having a clear inventory. I know my hosts, I know the virtual machines on the hosts, so I have complete control over what's there.
Better transparency.
Exactly. Reduced number of administrators obviously reduces the human error, right? Computers don't make mistakes often. Humans, unfortunately, make mistakes frequently, so reducing human error. Also, you get literally more training for those people. They're able to see more problems, more broad view of the world around them, and therefore they're able to react more quickly. They have a little bit more control. It's awfully easy if you've got a penetration to shut off a host, literally. File down, done. And bring it back up when you know it's secure and safe. So you have all of that. And then, of course, there's the other components of traditional security. We can lock things down. We can control them. You can create virtual firewalls to segment sections of your environment so that you have additional security for that segment. You can even secure an entire host.
Wow. Yeah, so it sounds to me like just the management of the environment, it becomes much easier. I mean, because of that transparency, knowing what's there. As someone mentioned, the perimeters are shrunk down, so better picture of your entire infrastructure. Interesting.
Absolutely.
Interesting. John Robinson, what do you think on some of the key security benefits and technologies associated with virtualization?
So a lot have already been discussed. I'll just add on a couple other things from a security perspective. One of them would be the virtualization. The virtualization technology allows organizations to actually spin up new instances and environments much faster to do their QA patch management testing, regression testing, before they actually roll it into the field. So it actually allows an organization to provide that regression testing in support of security patches, right? Much faster and a lot cheaper because they only spin up what they need when they need it, and when they don't need it, they spin it down and not consuming resources or spending money on idle resources waiting for something to be patched up. The other thing from a security perspective is a much higher resiliency to failure. So in a virtualized world, when you got a large cluster of physical resources where the virtualized workload can be moved around dynamically on the fly, when there is a failure, you can actually move them around much faster. So it's a higher resiliency, which increases security.
Yeah, it sounds like again, much more control of the management, much more speed to production, speed for change, speed for patches, and so forth. Mark, Belk, what do you think? What can you add to the conversation? It's always dangerous being last because you can sort of say ditto, but what can you add to the ditto?
So I'm playing anchor here. So there's a couple of additions to that. So you've got virtualization at desktop and application services. When you're looking at that scenario, you can actually centralize some of the data. Data is rich. We're collecting more and more data. Some of that data is very sensitive. Putting it behind some virtual resources allows me to keep a buffer to that data. I can control that data better. I don't have to let it be distributed out into the workforce as readily once I virtualize it. The proximity of one service connecting to another. We've been moving towards service-oriented architecture for quite some time at the app tier. So having those services call each other within the data center, I get proximity, I get speed, and I can protect now in flow certain services from each other. One of the big benefits I see is it's come up a couple of times. So you get the IV and V piece. I can roll back quickly, but it also allows me to consolidate expertise. So as I create service centers, and those service centers are focused on a mission function, both at the application and others, the security services also become consolidated at that center as well. So therefore, I can bring more expertise to the center in a data center security scenario and manage that in a close to the service kind of scenario. Security becomes a service as we move forward.
Yeah, that's a great point. I never thought of that. That's because we hear everything as a service. Security is a service. Pretty much now it's whatever you pick as a service. But security as a service has been somewhat of a challenge because with sensitive data, as you're mentioning, but with virtualization, you have a better handle on buffering that data, so it makes a little bit smoother process to go into that direction. Let's talk a little bit. Cloud has come up. Cloud environments, and we've got all kinds of clouds. We've got private clouds, public clouds, hybrid clouds, and we've got hardware, software, storage. Heterogeneous equipment going in there. How do you begin to address security in cloud environments that include heterogeneous equipment and lots of different kinds of hardware, software, storage solutions, and so forth? Some as a service, perhaps, some owned, perhaps, some transitioning, some in the process. Frank, how do you begin to tackle some of those kinds of issues?
And there are messy issues.
Yeah.
We have to look at it from the physical as well as the logical viewpoint. Physically, we can, DoD requires isolation of different types of applications. Dirty applications are zoned off, as well as applications that have internet access are zoned in a particular thing too. So that's the physicalization of it. The logical is kind of more complex because we actually look at the hypervisor and what the hypervisor is doing. Some security holes have been mentioned in hypervisors lately, and so we've been researching what is the best hypervisor to use, as well as determining, what are the standards that we need to follow when we select a hypervisor. And some of those are bare metal hypervisors, and it has to be roots of trust. And so there's things that you have to watch out for. The other way is, the way we're looking at it with AFRL, it's a question of auditing what's going on more effectively to see exactly what's happening, especially when you move things around within the VM environment. So you're not sure what's happening. So they're trying to do a process of actually doing cloud auditing. And lastly, there's resiliency. We've been working with DARPA, and John mentioned this too a little bit. How resilient can your systems be, and especially when we talk in a cloud environment where we have C2 systems, if we ever get to that point, that we want to make sure they're resilient, they move around, But however, we have to make sure that we can track where they're moving and know what's actually happening, especially at the data end, especially when they go to the SAN and come back and forth.
Right.
So we're working in all those aspects, like with DARPA, for the resilient networks, and try to keep track of what's going on.
Right. Now, I'm guessing, at Air Force, your cloud is a private cloud, or within the confines of the Air Force.
It will be.
Yeah, I'm guessing that, because I think these issues would be a little bit different, if you were talking public clouds too, because now you have a shared risk.
There is some public, but it's very few outward-facing web, systems that would actually be put in a public cloud, except that there's issues with actually doing that in terms of e-discovery, as well as shutting down systems that U.S. Cybercom would like to do.
Right. Interesting. James, Steven, what do you think on this question about security in cloud environments where you have various kinds of virtualization, maybe hardware, software storage, heterogeneous equipment, decisions? How do you begin making decisions about, how you're going to address security in those kinds of environments?
Well, I think it's important that you come up with a strategy that's, defense in depth from the physical layer, as Frank mentioned, all the way in. Also, you have to have solid process and procedures, make sure that they're being repeated the same, so you have some level of assurance as you deploy systems into those environments. And it's never going to be perfect in a especially in a public-facing cloud-type environment, but we have to do everything we can to be prepared for when those bad guys and actors do make their way into the environments, and have those tools and the trained staff in place.
Right. And then you have, Frank's word, resilience. That word comes up over and over and over again. I've testified a few times on cybersecurity, and was asked by a couple of congressmen, can you identify all the vulnerabilities in your networks? And I said, that nobody can identify every known vulnerability, and there's new ones popping up every day. So the answer is, are we prepared to address them when they happen, and can we recover and quickly? Because I don't think anyone's going to be able to say, no, we'll never have an issue. It's just not possible. But so resilience becomes the word, in terms of recovery processes. John Robinson over at Technica, what do you think in addressing security in environments that may be heterogeneous with different types of hardware and software and storage, some as a service, some virtualized, some in the process? What's some of the key security challenges or a way to address security in those kinds of environments?
Sure. So virtualization is nothing more than an introduction of another set of technologies, right? Just like anything else in the network and the storage or the server infrastructure. So you're going to have to approach it just like any new technology. All the existing best practices that are already being applied, all the guidelines that are already been crafted by the organization that you're supporting, that you're providing services to, they all still apply. So you're going to have to implement those, and basically the most important thing is the risk assessment. So as you introduce a new technology such as virtualization, you're going to have to do your rigor for the risk assessment and act accordingly and implement accordingly.
Right, terrific. And I want to hear from Scott and Mark on this subject too, but we first need to take a short break. You're listening to Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, 1500
Welcome
AM. Back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, 1500 AM. I'm Jim Flyzik here with Frank Koniecnzy from Air Force, James Steven from USDA, Mark Belk from Juniper Networks, Scott Andersen from Lockheed Martin IS&GS, and John Robinson from Technica Corporation. We're talking security in a virtualized world. We went to break. We were talking about cloud and the fact that you have heterogeneous equipment, perhaps, different types of hardware, software, storage, and how do you go about addressing security in that type of environment? Mark Belk over Juniper, how's Juniper look at some of those kinds of questions in supporting your customers around the world?
Yeah, sure. So, virtualization, we're talking about abstraction of operating systems above the physical. So we talked about physical and logical. So, in that context, we want to keep trust. Now, we're abstracting the operating system, but we want trust still connected to the hardware, still connected, still creating communication flows. And so we want to keep the zones secure paths for the communications to those trusted applications, to those trusted contexts. So, in a hypervisor scenario, we want to support the notion of attestation of a specific device. We do this at the edge with the end user today through mobile, through other techniques. We want to bring that into the server side. We want to actually link that legacy physical. Physical's not going away. There's still distributed individuals who need to consume these services, and we want to link some of those services there. So we want to support the physical zones and securing of that communication path to the logical ones, the virtualized components. So we do that in our context of physical firewall rules to virtual firewall rules.
So it sounds a little bit like what John was saying earlier. It's just introducing new technology, but you stay with the security processes we had before. You're just applying them a little different to the new technologies.
And you want to centralize and automate that as well.
Yeah, I think everyone's looking along the way. You're looking for opportunities to make things more efficient and so forth. Scott Anderson, what do you think on this subject? Cloud security, heterogeneous products, hybrid clouds, public clouds, private clouds, and so forth. How do you go about looking at that security question?
Well, I mean, so first of all, Lockheed is a security company. We've done that for many years for the federal government and other groups. It's a core component of what we deliver and what we call Solus, which is our brand for cloud solutions as a service. But the other side of it is we are firm believers in going to the smart people and asking them what they're doing. So we have a cybersecurity alliance that has a number of members, including Juniper, one of the founding members. And what we do is we go to those folks and we say, what are you guys thinking about? So, for example, we know that Intel is thinking, hey, why are we doing security outside of the PC? Let's do it on the chip. Let's start looking at the chip itself. Let's start building on what's there. Juniper is talking about let's do security at the edge. VM and other hypervisors are talking about let's provide that at the hypervisor level and the host level. The large manufacturing companies of hardware, the Dells and others of the world, are looking at the same thing. What can we do to provide security? How can we provide the security at every level? And what we would like to do is have an overarching view of all those, be able to bring that together for the right solution at the right time for our customer.
Yeah, that's great. I like that. Ask people, talk to individuals who are doing security for the various components. And the good thing about cybersecurity is I think it's now understood it's a priority, and I think industry understands that, and there's an awful lot of effort going on to try to get security, especially when you talk about mobile devices and things like that, which we're not really have time to get into today, but there's so much attention now, and it's a national priority. I think despite the tough budget climates, I think there's still a lot of movement on cybersecurity programs. Let's shift gears again a little bit. Let's talk about some of the other challenges that are out there. We talked about the security and the technology, but what are some of the other challenges you have in getting to these environments and getting to where you want to get? I know James will lead off with you. You mentioned governance early on and getting the governance thing up front. I happen to know, I won't mention names here, but I happen to know a couple of other agencies, talking with them, which did not do that, and they got to the environment. Now they have a lot of friction amongst the components and all, and who does what and everything else. But what are some of the big challenges, other than security and technology, to get to the environment you're trying to achieve?
So in a virtualized environment, the customers and applications are adjacent to one another, so you can't just focus on the north-south access controls anymore. You really have to look at east-west and also access controls at the infrastructure layer to make sure that one customer is not adversely impacting another customer on that platform.
That's interesting. First time I had a geography kind of an anecdote there, but that's good.
That's a primary example of a major challenge that we faced as we decided to move into the highly virtualized private cloud, if you will. Right.
And how about technology decisions? Is that did everyone just get together and agree right out of the box, or?
No, the technology decisions were we formed a IPT to take a look at what was available out in the space. They did proof of concepts and tested many different technologies, tried to break it all, and came up with a set of recommendations that they brought forward to leadership. And
Yeah, I know. When the reason I asked the question is back when I was CIO at Treasury. We had all the bureaus down there. When we had to make technology decisions, it seemed like everybody had had the answer and whatever, and trying to get to consensus was sometimes. But eventually, we went with the adopt and go. At some point in time, you get everybody's thoughts on the table, but you make a decision and go. That kind of thing. Frank, what do you think? What are some of the tough things yet? What are some of the challenges that you face day to day to get to that environment that you're trying to get to?
Well, governance is a big one, especially when we go talk about DoD going to a commercial cloud. We have the DoD cloud broker, which is DISA, which is trying to get the governance together as to the way we do things and actually acquire cloud services. However, there's lots of contractual issues that have to be added to that in terms of identification as well as jurisdiction of the data. This goes on and on as to what happens, like U.S. personnel only. As I mentioned before, Cybercom has to be able to come into a commercial cloud and shut off the systems if it finds a threat, which a lot of people in commercial side don't want to do that. There's also security spillage issues. If some classified document or some data gets put into a commercial cloud, how do you clean it effectively without crunching all the disks? And then as we went down the hypervisor viewpoint, we started looking at the management of the hypervisors. And when you swap a hypervisor or a VM system out into the SAN, the question becomes, how secure is it sitting there on the SAN? Can somebody actually get into it? And so we get into, data encryption at rest, and where are the keys for this? And so it gets very, very complex as to security environment when you start talking about how you manage things.
Yeah, I can imagine just in the contractual issues, one of the big things is everything as a service. What I'm seeing across a lot of government agencies is the acquisition folks are still trying to figure some of that out. How do you take something that traditionally was owned and now going to be offered as a service and change the service level agreements and things like that? In some cases, they're saying, well, we have to go through a whole new procurement process to go to a service. Other cases they're not. So it's been interesting watching that dynamic. Scott Anderson, what are some of the hard things, the tough things to get done, the challenges to get and to help your customers get where they need to be?
Well, first of all, the exploits within the hypervisor environments, the fear, right? When you have a co-located environment, there is the fear. The great joke about some of the vendors who sell those services right now is, my virtual machine is sitting next to the virtual machine owned by a Chinese general. And right, wrong, or indifferent, rumor or not, there is a fear. The other environments that are out there, the other groups that are out there, the other people that are out there, and that environment can be a risk. So that's a significant risk. I think the other side of it is rushing. Just because you can doesn't mean you should right away. You need to think about what you're moving to the cloud, why you're moving it to the cloud, and what's really the benefit you're going to get with virtualization. If it's a system that requires a massive amount of disk, a massive amount of memory, you need to think about how you move that to the cloud and what you're doing with that application. There's some excellent university studies going on right now where they look at applications and they actually break them down and say, how does this application really work? Because sometimes we find applications don't work the way we think they do. Mobility was mentioned. Mobility is, everybody says mobility is the client for cloud. If mobility really is the client for cloud, that means it really is the client ultimately for virtualization, which is an underneath layer of cloud. That means, what is different? How do we have to approach that application, those applications, and that security? Because frankly, you can't do the same level of security on a mobile device that you can on a laptop, and you can't do the same as you could on a physical server. So how do we think, and what are the big future things for those environments?
Yeah, that's great. I think you're right. I think in the future we got to think holistically, especially, it's clear we're moving towards a more mobile workforce, and the whole world's moving more and more mobile. And when the kids get in the workforce, the mobility is going to be there. So it's going to be a holistic approach. It will no longer be some of the traditional ways we thought about some of this. Mark Belk over Juniper, what are some of the tough things yet? What are some of the real challenges that you face in order to try to get your customers to where they are trying to be?
Centralization of policy, governance was mentioned, so certainly, want to support the path to governance as we're centralizing, as we're virtualizing mission resources. Along with that, the transition of physical to virtual, logical, everything physical doesn't automatically transition into a virtual world. And if it does, you can add a significant number of virtual appliances where the physical appliances used to rule in some of those security scenarios. So we begin to load the virtual tier with virtual appliances that perform security services. So we want to try to consolidate, centralize those where possible.
Right.
Certifications, validation becomes a topic of interest in the governance scenario. In the physical world, we've been doing security automation for some time, looking at consolidation or integration of security information. That's what continuous monitoring is all about. Right. How do you do that when the resources, elastic resources, some of them are online, some of them are offline? So we need to take continuous monitoring into offline services. We need to actually do continuous monitoring of the hypervisor. It is actually a kernel. Right. So there's some interesting pieces to grow to.
Yeah, a couple points brought up there. A great one is certification and accreditation too. I think it's going to be a real sticky point moving into the future because the technology changes, and we talked about speed to deploy in virtual worlds and with mobile apps and all that, how quickly they can be deployed. But yet the certification accreditation process is out there, which takes a long time. So somewhere, somebody's going to have to start working those issues in order to get things into production faster. So very good points there. And continuous monitoring, it's that issue comes up just about whatever topic we pick to do a radio show about, someone gets continuous monitoring in there somewhere along the way because it is so important. John Robinson, what do you think in terms of some of the difficult things to do, the key challenges, the sort of like the roadblocks we got to knock down in order to get those customers where they need to be?
So with virtualization and all the cloud computing services that are very popular these days, and that's where everybody's headed, you have a lot of operational issues that you need to solve. There's with the new virtualization technologies, you can spin up new instances on the fly in seconds, minutes. Well, when you have that type of increased agility for new services or new capabilities, you're in a hurry up and wait mode. Because of the acquisition life cycle. There are software licenses that have to be acquired, that have to be put on there. So you have this fantastic ability to actually have more IT services and capabilities at your fingertips to meet some type of particular requirement. Maybe it's a disaster relief or some mission, right? Well, you can't use it because now I have this acquisition life cycle I'm waiting for. So that's got to be resolved in order to take advantage of all this virtualization. The proliferation of assets, where those assets are. When we're talking about virtualization and cloud computing, where that workload can be moved around within a single data center or between data centers or between public and private for whatever the requirement may be, you need to be aware of where those assets are. From a security perspective, you need to protect them, and you need to know if they are being attacked, where they are, and how to take action, right? So those are some of the challenges. And as far as continuous monitoring is great and it's key, but the real kicker is going to be the actual real-time remediation based on the output of continuous monitoring. Right. That's where we're failing, and that's where we need to start pushing a lot of focus on is taking action. So it's great that we're monitoring, but if we're taking action through humans in the middle, where we're actually creating reports and passing them on to someone else, to go take action, well, damage has already been done, and you're too late.
Yeah, very good points. And and continuous monitoring gets confused too. I mean, in my mind, there's three pieces to it. There's out there in the perimeter, and the government has the Einstein program and the TIC program, things like that, addressing that. Then you have the continuous monitoring of the data at rest or data in your data. Then, to me, the one that's so important is the continuous monitoring of the configurations of the devices in the network. That one seems to me, in my opinion, that one gets less attention sometimes than the others do, but it's probably one of the most important things that needs to be done. Let's talk a little bit here about security solutions and keeping pace with the rapid changes in technology. And I'll add sort of a little controversy here. I've actually taught cybersecurity at the graduate level for 17 years on weekends at the University of Maryland, and I always had the opinion that we are a reactionary society and we only fix things after they break. And we're now looking to go to virtualization, and we're going to all these new technologies. Are we keeping up, security-wise, with technology change? Are we getting proactive? Are we still fixing things as we see them breaking? Because I think in today's world, where things are getting more and more dangerous, if you will, with malicious code, to not be proactive could result in some significant damage. James, Steven, what do you think? Are the security solutions keeping pace with the rapid changes in technology?
I think the general statement would be yes, but the actors, as we know, tend to, once we solve one problem, they're working on creating the next problem.
Yeah, it's almost like a game. It's almost like, they fixed that one, now let me see how I can find something else to attack.
One of the things we have with deploying new technologies would be applications by their nature. Once they're deployed, then they want to be stabilized and stay there. So we have to adopt these new technologies and features without impacting and the applications that are in that virtualized environment.
Right.
And that's been somewhat of a challenge for us, but with a good thorough test procedures and labs and the like, we're able to adopt the new technologies that are helping us keep our customers' applications safe from those actors.
Okay. Yeah, I know, because I'm not going to mention company names, of course, but it seems like I have an awful lot of software on my computers that I continually get these security patches sent down to me, and it makes me, say, if it were built secure in the first place, then why do I have to keep putting all these patches on it all along, as we move along? Frank, what do you think on this question? Are security solutions staying up there, keeping pace? Are we getting more proactive?
I think we're trying to get more proactive. I know we're achieving in some results. For instance, when we talked about malware detection, there's systems now that look at, especially in the VM environment, can detect if something is actually changing in the VM that you didn't expect, and then flushes it away and start a new one. So there's some proactive work done, like when I talked about the AFRL work with Citrix and Intel. They are actually using the Intel chipset. So they're trying to go proactively from that viewpoint of saying, yes, the security is down to the root level of the chip, and trying to build up from there. So we're trying to do some work to get more proactive. But again, a lot of it is purely reactive. We like to do that a lot and that's why some of the security in depth that we're changing to now is going to be more of attribute-based access controls, as opposed to defending the network per se. You see the data being defended more as a more proactive use of how to stop the threat from occurring.
Right. Yeah, I think I sense too, as the threats are becoming more well-known, I guess, with our leaders. We see the president with executive orders, and we're hearing about the Congress talking about legislation again. I think that shows a movement towards some more proactive approaches in addressing these issues. And I want to hear from our industry guest on this too, but first we need to take a short break. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio 1500 AM. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio 1500 AM. I'm Jim Flyzik here with Frank Koniecnzy from Air Force, James Steven from USDA, Mark Belk from Juniper Networks, Scott Andersen from Lockheed Martin IS&GS, and John Robinson from Technica Corporation. We're talking security and virtual environments. I posed a question to our government guest here. I'm going to pose the same question to our industry guest, and that is, I kind of still feel that many times we're trying to catch up. Things are happening and where security comes after the fact. Are we getting to a point where the security solutions are keeping pace with the rapid changes in technology? What do you think, John Robinson over at Technica? You think the solutions are keeping pace?
So I think they're doing a better job.
Okay.
So I agree. I think the industry is reactionary, and they're reactionary based on requirements coming in. They're market driven. So they see the writing on the wall. They see the requirements coming in, and they are getting better at providing the solutions faster. keeping up with the technology that the customers are wanting, especially with the virtualization and cloud computing services. But they need to do, I think they do need to do a better job.
Yeah, I think, what we don't want is, the so-called digital Pearl Harbor or something so bad to happen that, before we take action and try to make some changes. Scott Anderson, what do you think at Lockheed? Are the security solutions keeping pace with these technology changes and with the threats?
Well, so, and I like your point of, we're kind of a reactionary in the security space. We like to talk about security as an 80-20 rule. 80% of the security is normally handled by the standard security software. We need to keep that updated. You'd be amazed how many people you go to their home PC and look at the last time they updated their virus. Right. And that home PC is often used to send work documents, and if it's a smart enough virus, it's in your corporate network. And,
right.
You can't say, oh, don't take work home. That's kind of an anti-thing. So the 80% stuff, that's what the software's for. The 20% is proactive. That's where you have to start thinking about what is really the exploit? What are they trying to get? And what are they trying to do? So if we think about security exploits, originally it was kind of the OS, right? Let's go after Windows, right? Because Windows was the predominant. Let's hit it. It's easy to do at the time. Hopefully, Microsoft got better at that. The next thing was applications. Let's attack applications themselves. And not only attack them, but how do people use them? And let's attack the use. Right. So you had viruses that attached to your address book and sent billions of spam out to all your friends, and suddenly that virus takes over the world. So we want to get after the 20%. We want to figure out how we can get the right solutions in place to proactively attack the 20%.
Yeah, I like that. Well put. Good image in my head about that. Good way to understand the issue. Mark Belk over at Juniper Networks. What do you think, Mark, in terms of solutions keeping pace with the technologies and with the threats?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about it as we've had some changes in demands. So in the last number of years, we've had a huge demand to increase productivity. That led to proliferation of applications. You mentioned trust of applications and the patch cycle of applications, and that's really where security had to come along and make sure that the patch cycle really was engaged. We have demand for mobility. Now we want to be mobile. That's creating a new set of threats that we are now moving to address. Maybe not fast enough, but we're moving to address. And so some of that proliferation of productivity is now coming to a demand of how do we consolidate, centralize, and create service centers that focus, that consolidate. I don't want this same service stood up in every agency, in every industry. I want to consolidate these services. I want to reduce my costs. We have proliferation of IT, then consumerization of IT. And so there's new threats that come with that centralization. Compartmentalization of data, commingling of data, privacy and information as I share information. So those are the components that we really need to support in service. Are we getting there fast enough? So in that direction we want security, but we also want open standards. Standards take a while to create. So in the middle we'll have industry components, and we want to drive that. There's also policy. Where's the edge of cyber at the moment? What is sovereign territory? Those kind of policies are still evolving as well. All of these need to converge much faster for the cyber threats we have today.
Yeah, great points. Great points there. A lot of good things to think about. The and it's not just the technology. Scott mentioned taking work home, using your computer, and we have all this talk about, bring your own device, this, that, and the other thing. That's going to create all kinds of issues around security and different types of liabilities, and there'll be a whole new can of worms around that as we move forward. We've got about 12 minutes left in the show here, so what we'd like to do now, like we end all the shows by talking about the future, sort of like where all this is going. It's an opportunity for each of our panelists here to share your vision for the future. What do you see in terms of improvements that we may see in government maybe 5-10 years out that could be attributed to this direction or these trends? Let's start with John Robinson and work our way down the panelist table here. John, what's your crystal ball look like? Where's this all going 5 years from now? What will be different?
This is going to be good. So we're going to keep moving down the virtualization and cloud computing services. That's where industry is going. So where I think where we're going is we're going to see a lot more of the big data, big analytics, because more and more there's actually going to be more data generated based on all this virtualization and cloud computing technology and capabilities that are being put out there. So there's going to be more data. They're going to centralize it. There's the continuous monitoring stuff that's got to be done with the big data analytics, right? So I think you're going to see a lot more push for real-time analytics and real-time mitigation based on those analytics for security. You're going to see a lot better implementation of stronger access controls. The Air Force and the DoD is pioneering a lot of good, strong end-to-end access control methods with authorization. And you do the data tagging. Do data tagging down at the data level to actually provide better and stronger fine-grained access controls. So we're moving out of the network, where basically a lot of our focus has been at the network security. We're protecting the boundary, the perimeter. No, can't get in, can't get out. Right. But now we're going to start moving up the stack at the application and the data layer. That's going to require a lot of data tagging technologies and implementations with a lot of fine-grained access control and authorizations.
Yeah, excellent points. I mean, too, we have talked, big data and big data analytics and things like that, which are going to be challenging and in some cases, hopefully, are able to enhance security. Scott Anderson, what's the future look like for you? Where's this all going?
Well, I think the big first thing is that there's going to be some cost savings for federal agencies across the board. When you virtualize, it's less expensive over time. There's going to be some environmental impact to go the other side. It's a reduced CO2 footprint. So those are two huge things. I think the other side of this is that mobility is the explosion. But let's be realistic. Mobility is the explosion today.
Right.
What's beyond mobility? And that's the concept of the secure connection. The user is always connected. The user is always securely connected. And that's a different paradigm than what we have today, where maybe the concept, and I know we all relish going in the morning early and getting to work and sitting down in front of our workstation. Maybe the future is your mobile device is your workstation. You plug that into other devices that connect to other things, but you don't have that big lugging laptop. I know my shoulder hurts because I carry that laptop with me everywhere. Well, that's something that maybe it goes away. Maybe we don't have that anymore. So that's one thing. The other component is, what do we have resource-wise for us and available to us? My very first job many years ago in IT was working with a company that did large CAD diagrams. And they had engineers, and the engineers built those diagrams on massive workstations, huge, hundreds and hundreds of tons of available resources. I can now ship that and farm that out to the cloud and literally have the same amount of resource available on an iPad.
Right.
So the future today, if you look at the next 3, 4, 5 years, mobility.
Right.
Beyond that, I believe it's the totally connected, as you said earlier, the young people when they get there, wholly connected environment.
Yeah, I'll have to think this one through since I take credit for inventing modern day wireless. I'll have to think of what's going to be beyond that and the next thing. But I think you make some good points because I think there's going to be a lot of debate going on between your handheld devices, your iPhones and Androids and Blackberries and things like that, laptops and even desktops. Some of them are going to start disappearing as we go to sort of the universal devices. Mark Belk, what do you think? What's your crystal ball look like? Where's this all going?
Well, mobility is still pervasive, and I think people are not going to go back to a desk. They're still going to be more and more mobile. The increase in trust of that mobile device, the increase in trust of the user as he connects to the device and then connects to services. Services are becoming very distributed. Identity also needs to be very distributed. The reality is I want control as a consumer of my identity. There's policy that supports that scenario, but I want to be able to create security zones, much like an enterprise creates around applications, around my own identity. And I want to say where my identity can actually be used on the broader internet in the long term. There's going to be more centralization, consolidation of services. That means consolidation of management is going to get a lot better. Analytics, as John mentioned, is going to, with that centralization of data, analytics on that data should become more pervasive. Control and configuration. We're going to automate more and more cross-platform configuration, so that's a very good thing. Extraction of services. The physical services we provided to secure things are going to become security as a service. They're going to be linked right in with the with those centralized services, we'll be able to consolidate, create expertise for certain threat types, and have that centralized in the future, I believe.
Yeah.
And then, today there's still separation of the application tier and the network and the communication tier. The network is becoming programmable. We're going to see consolidation of those activities in the future. You will see some of the same automation scenarios you mentioned in continuous monitoring, the missing component in continuous monitoring of the network and some of those configurations. As we program the network, those are going to become more linked together. So you'll see a lot more centralization of network controllers, the separation of the logic in a communication function out to the same service center.
Good, terrific. I like that identity too. I hold the opinion if we can just get the authentication and identity right, everything else becomes a lot easier. James, Steven, what's it look like to you? Where's the future? Where's this all going?
I'm not sure I can see 5 to 10 years out the rapid change in the technologies in this space.
But it's fun to think it anyway, so take a shot.
Well, I'm going to look at a shorter term, 1 to 2 years.
Okay.
I think at USDA we're probably going to be adopting and deploying some services that enable us to use the traditional server virtualization coupled with things like software-defined networking, software-defined storage, creating virtual data centers, if you will. These, we believe, are going to be give us even more ability to be highly scalable. They'll be highly available and should be at a lower cost and be very agile in that space. I think the challenge will be, again, the governance and ensuring policies are in place that as you deploy these virtual data centers, the appropriate controls are baked into those builds. And I think that in the short term, that's where we're headed next. Long term, TBD. I do agree that mobility is on all of our radar screens and how we embrace that and deploy it to our users and our other federal employees out in the field.
Terrific. Well said. Frank, what's it look like down the road to you? Where's this going?
Well, I think we want to have an enterprise cloud, if you will. An enterprise cloud meaning that from any data facility we can roll over to any other data facility as necessary to support the resiliency that's required, as well as having a standardized platform as a service that we are going to go to so it increases our efficiency as well as decreasing costs. But everybody's talked about mobility, but the Air Force mobility is a little more developed than that. It's called aircraft and satellites. So as part of the single integrated network environment that we have, we want to be able to link the enterprise cloud to those assets as well, besides the mobile phones and pads and everything else. And, John talked about big data. Well, if you have a cloud on an airplane that's accumulating data, we could process the data in the airplane. Why does it have to send it down? Right. So we're looking at how you would actually structure clouds to support mission assurance, change dynamic mission parameters, as well as figuring out how do we get services across the different platforms that we have, that if a particular platform has a particular service you want, how do you access that service in that platform, as opposed to anything else. So it's So it's going to be a more dynamic viewpoint as to mobility per se, and how you would craft it so it would be standard and secure, because security has to be a big deal in this one. Right. Because you don't want anybody getting attached to any of those assets and figuring out what to do.
Yeah. Terrific. Well said. Let me try to do some wrap-ups here, some closing remarks. And as I always do, I jot down notes as you're making your points. One thing I like about the show is I get to, and I think Scott brought it up earlier, talking to smart people. I like to sit here and listen to the smart panelists talk and try to take down some notes. So what I heard is, virtualization is leading to the shrinking of the perimeter, which is, and better utilization and a chance to get better governance and management structures in place to manage the environment because of the transparency that comes with it. We talked about a lot of the virtualization on the server side, but Frank, you also pointed out on the client side there are some benefits also, and talked about the fact that the administration, I think someone said like 50 to 1 in terms of the number of resources needed to manage in a virtual environment. And of course the speed to production and the consolidation of expertise were two strong points brought out, that you can get consolidate that expertise, move things much faster. Cloud, we talked about physical and logical have to be viewed separate, and repeatable procedures being important to get in place to keep that security in place. Challenges, governance came up a few times. We talked about contractual issues. There are going to be contractual issues along the way when the environments change. It's going to change the way government acquisition folks need to buy things. We talked about the exploits and hypervisors with sitting in, and we had a little geography discussion about north, south, east, west, and certification and accreditation processes. How will they keep pace with all these changes? We, I think, said that we believe we're maybe not quite there yet, but we are getting much more proactive than we were in the past, that we're starting to think out in front of the threat. And looking to the future, I heard from just about everyone, more centralization and consolidation will continue to happen. More things as a service. Cost savings are coming, and I guess as I look out, I picture a world where government agencies will be focused on their mission, their policies, their services, and the IT services will just be there. It'll be sort of taken that they're there, and we won't have to, you won't see IT services on a mission statement of major agencies. With that, I want to first thank our panelists for taking time from their very busy schedules to come here and share their comments and their ideas.